This is a journey through one of the most ambitious history books ever assembled, a sprawling work that tries to tell the true history of Christianity by following its long collision with the older faiths of Europe and the East. The volume in our hands is the engine room of that book, its apparatus, more than 700 endnotes, a great catalog of illustrations, and a startling Talmudic appendix on the scapegoat. From these foundations, we can reconstruct the book's grand argument, slide by slide, source by source, and walk back into a world of pagan gods, burning witches, fire-worshipping priests, and the buried roots of the religion that conquered the West. The book's premise is bold. Christianity, it argues, did not simply replace the religions that came before it. It conquered them, absorbed their festivals and symbols, and then redefined their gods and priests as devils and witches. To prove this, the author leans on a deep shelf of scholarship: Margaret Murray on the witch cult, Norman Cohn on Europe's inner demons, Mary Boyce on the Zoroastrians, Richard Fletcher on the conversion of Europe, and the Malleus Maleficarum itself. Across Slavic villages, Irish fairs, Persian fire temples, and the caves of the Dead Sea, the same pattern repeats. The old faith is broken, buried, and survives only in disguise. To read Christianity honestly, the book insists, you must first exhume what it stood upon. First, the volume itself, a workshop of more than 700 endnotes, dozens of figures, and the author's own fieldwork. From this scaffolding, the whole grand argument can be rebuilt, source by source, and we can see exactly which scholars and which scriptures the book has chosen to stand upon. We begin with the volume itself because it is unusual. What survives here is not the narrative, but the scaffolding. Over 700 numbered endnotes running from the 500s into the 1200s, a vast catalog of more than 70 figures, and the author's own photographs and artistic reconstructions. There are reconstructions of a Russian pagan warrior's attire and of the head witch's costume from the North Eric trial, field notes from a visit to Kilorglin in the autumn of 1998, and German newspaper cuttings about a goat festival. This is the workshop of a scholar who traveled, photographed, and read in many languages. From this apparatus alone, we can rebuild the book's true subject, the long war between Christianity and the older faiths. A book is only as strong as the company it keeps, and these notes name remarkable company. Again and again, the same authorities return. Margaret Murray's witch cult in Western Europe and God of the Witches, Norman Cohn's Europe's Inner Demons, Carlo Ginzburg's Ecstasies, Mary Boyce's The Zoroastrians and the Pahlavi texts, Richard Fletcher's Conversion of Europe, and Eric Christensen's Northern Crusades, Valerie Flint's Rise of Magic in Early Medieval Europe, Eusebius's History of the Church, and Geza Vermis's translation of the Dead Sea Scrolls, Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, and darkest of all, the Malleus Maleficarum. The author is building a bridge between the witch trial and the fire temple, between the gospel and the buried God, and these are its peers. The author's method is comparison across cultures, and the notes betray its range. Beside Christian sources sit the Zoroastrian Inkard and Bundahishna, the Hindu Agni Purana, the Rig Veda, the Finnish Kalevala, the Icelandic sagas, and the law code called Gragas, and a thicket of Slavic dictionaries by Vosmer, Vlasova, and Maximov. The argument is that the same deep structures, a horned fertility god, a battle of light against darkness, a journey to the underworld, surface everywhere from Ireland to Iran. When Christianity met these structures, it did not invent them, It inherited some, condemned others, and renamed the rest. To see what was inherited and what was demonized, the author triangulates between the scriptures of the conquered and the records of the conquerors. Next, we turn to the older faiths of Europe, the gods, festivals, and spirits that did not vanish at the missionaries' word. From an Irish Gut fair to the haunted villages of Russia and the epics of the North, the book shows the old religion surviving in plain sight, generations after its temples fell. The first great theme is conversion. Drawing on Fletcher's Conversion of Europe and Jones and Pennock's History of Pagan Europe, the book traces how a Mediterranean faith spread north and east across a continent that was overwhelmingly pagan. Valerie Flint's Rise of Magic in Early Medieval Europe supplies the subtle mechanism. The Church did not simply forbid the old magic, it rehabilitated parts of it, baptizing healing charms, holy wells, and protective rites as Christian sacramentals, while branding the rest as demonic. Saints quietly took over the work once done by local gods and wise women. Conversion, in this telling, was less a sudden conquest than a centuries-long negotiation in which the old powers were partly absorbed, partly outlawed, and slowly redefined as superstition or witchcraft. For proof that the old religion endured, the author went to Ireland. The notes record a fact-finding visit to Killorglin in the autumn of 1998 and conversations with the folklorist Patrick Hallihan, who keeps a folk museum and German newspaper cuttings on a related festival. There, every August, the Puck Fair crowns a wild mountain goat as king for 3 days, raised high on a platform above the town. The author reads this as a survival of a pre-Christian fertility rite, the horned beast enthroned as a god, tolerated by the Church because it could not be stamped out. Sources by Hallihan, Foley, and the poet Muriel Rukeyser, who wrote of the festival as an orgy, anchor the case. The old king never quite died. Eastward, the survivals run even deeper. The notes draw heavily on Vlasova's Encyclopedia of Russian Superstitions, Maximov's study of unclean and uncanny powers, and Vosmer's Etymological Dictionary, all mapping a populated spirit world that long outlived official baptism. House spirits, water nymphs, and field demons kept their names and their offerings for centuries after the Kievan state turned Christian. The author argues that Russian Orthodoxy spread slowly and thinly, its monasteries creeping outward while the villages held to the old calendar beneath a thin Christian veneer. Even the Church's own homilies, preserved in the sermons of Kievan Rus, rail against people who still pray to springs and groves. The evidence is the very anger of the creatures, scolding a faith that refused to disappear. The northern literatures preserve the same buried world. The Finnish Kalevala, cited from Bosley's translation, brims with shamans who sing reality into being, journeys to the land of the dead, and a smith who forges the heavens. The Icelandic sagas, the Loxdala and the Ynglinga, remember seeresses, shapeshifters, and kings descended from gods. Mircea Eliade's classic on shamanism ties these threads to a far older ecstatic religion stretching across the north. For the author, these are not mere folk tales. They are the scripture of the conquered, the theology of peoples whose temples were pulled down before they ever wrote a creed. Read beside the Christian record, they show what Europe believed before the missionaries came, and what continued to be sung at the hearth long after. Now the harder edge of conversion comes into view, through princes who baptized their people by decree, crusading knights who carried the font behind the spear, and a famous battle fought upon the ice. We watch how the cross was planted across the pagan north, often by force, and always at a cost. Conversion was not always gentle. The Russian Primary Chronicle, cited from the Cross and Sherbowitz-Wetzor edition, tells how Prince Vladimir of Kiev weighed the great faiths before choosing for his people. Envoys reported back on Islam, Judaism, and the Latin and Greek churches, and the Chronicle famously claims that the splendor of worship in Constantinople won the day. In the year 988, the prince was baptized and ordered Kiev's people into the Dnieper River, while the idol of the thunder god Perun was dragged down and thrown into the water. The author treats this scene as the template of Eastern conversion, a ruler's decision imposed from above, the old gods literally drowned, and a vast population told overnight that its ancestral powers were now demons.
Where persuasion failed, crusade followed. Erik Christiansen's Northern Crusades, repeatedly cited, describes how the Holy War, first aimed at Jerusalem, was turned against the pagans of the Baltic, the Wends, Prussians, and Lithuanians, who still worshipped sacred groves and thunder gods. Armed brotherhoods, above all the Teutonic Knights, carved out a crusading state along the northern frontier, offering the spear and a font as a single choice. The author sets this beside the slow advance of Orthodox monasteries from the Russian side, so that pagan Europe was squeezed between two expanding Christendoms. Whole peoples were baptized at the point of a sword, their shrines burned, their priests killed or driven into the forest. This was conversion as conquest, the cross planted by the same hands that held the blade.
The frontier sometimes erupted into open war. The notes cite David Nicola's study of Lake Peipus, the famous Battle of the Ice fought in 1242. There, Prince Alexander Nevsky of Novgorod met the Teutonic Knights and their allies on the frozen surface of the lake and broke their advance, a clash later mythologized as Orthodox Russia's stand against Latin Christian aggression from the West. For the author, the battle is doubly revealing. It shows that the wars of conversion set Christian against Christian as readily as Christian against pagan, and it shows how quickly such events became legend, retold to define the very identity of a people. The ice of Lake Peipus marks a border that was religious, political, and bloody all at once. The Christianization of Scandinavia tells the same story in a colder key. The author draws on Adam of Bremen's History of the Archbishops of Hamburg-Bremen, the sagas of King Olaf, and Iceland's early law code, the Gragas. Adam describes the great temple at Uppsala with its idols and its hanging sacrifices, a working pagan cult deep into the Christian centuries. The Icelandic laws record the moment when a whole assembly agreed to accept baptism while quietly permitting old customs to continue in private. Kings like Olaf pressed the new faith on their subjects with threats and force. Here again, conversion is shown as a negotiated surrender. Public Christianity layered over private heathenism, the temples falling one by one, while the household gods lingered at the edge of the firelight. Here lies the book's darkest and most disputed theme. Was the witch a real survivor of an ancient religion, as Margaret Murray claimed, or a fantasy stitched together by inquisitors, as Norman Cohn insisted? We follow the great argument between them, with Carlo Ginzburg searching for the truth that lies somewhere in between. Now the book turns to its darkest and most contested theme, the witch. Its starting point is Margaret Murray, the Egyptologist whose witch cult in Western Europe and God of the Witches argued that the people burned as witches had belonged to a real, organized religion. In her reading, the witches were the surviving worshippers of a pre-Christian fertility cult centered on a horned god, organized into covens of 13, meeting at the great seasonal festivals. What the inquisitors called the devil was, she claimed, simply the cult's masked human leader, a man dressed as the horned god of the old faith.
Murray's thesis is the spine of this section. The author uses it to argue that the witch hunts were, at bottom, the final campaign of Christianity's long war against the religion it replaced. Murray built her case from the trial confessions themselves, and the author follows her into the detail. The covens, she argued, gathered at the Sabbath to feast, dance, and renew the fertility of land and people under the eye of their horned overseer. The author repeats one vivid and almost comic record, a coven that confessed to shifting a bridge by heaving at it with their shoulders, the so-called devil acting as foreman, the members complaining afterwards that they had hurt their backs. From the North Berwick trial, the author even reconstructs the head witch's attire. Whatever we make of Murray's grand theory, these confessions describe people performing communal rites with a costumed leader, ordinary folk caught practicing something far older than the church that condemned them. Against Murray stands the book's great counterweight, Norman Cohn. His Europe's Inner Demons, cited many times, argued that the organized witch cult never existed at all. The terrifying Sabbath, with its night flights, orgies, and pacts with Satan, was not a real religion, but a fantasy, a stereotype assembled by theologians and inquisitors out of ancient slanders once thrown at heretics and even at the early Christians themselves. Confessions matched the template because torture and leading questions produced exactly the answers the questioners expected. The author lets Murray and Cohn argue across the pages, and the honest reader is left in the tension between them. Either way, the lesson is grim. A machine had been built that could conjure a heresy out of fear and then burn real people for it. Between Murray and Cohn, the author places Carlo Ginzburg, whose Ecstasies offers a subtler answer. Ginzburg uncovered the Benandanti, the good walkers of northern Italy, who believed they left their bodies at night to fight witches with stalks of fennel and so protect the harvest. Under inquisitorial pressure, their account was slowly bent until they confessed to being witches themselves. Ginzburg traced such night journeys across Europe and back to an ancient shamanic layer, ecstatic flights of the soul that long predated Christianity. This, for the author, is the missing link. There was no single organized cult as Murray imagined, but neither was the Sabbath pure invention. Beneath the trials lay a genuine substratum of folk ecstasy and shamanism, which the church misread, reshaped, and finally criminalized as devil worship. The hunt needed a handbook, and it got one. The notes quote the Malleus Maleficarum, the hammer of the witches, written by the Dominican inquisitors and printed in the 1480s. It opens with the papal bull of Pope Innocent VIII, which in 1484 lamented that many in Germany had given themselves to devils and empowered inquisitors to root them out. The Malleus then welded folklore, theology, and law into a manual for detecting, interrogating, and destroying witches, with whole sections devoted to why women were thought especially prone to the crime. The author treats this book as the moment the fantasy became official policy. With a pope's authority behind it and a printing press to spread it, the stereotype Cohn described was armed and let loose upon Europe. Then we step into the trials themselves, the cold machinery of accusation, torture, and confession that turned village quarrels into capital crimes. We meet the witches of one Belgian village, ask where the custom of burning truly came from, and test the famous legend of the Spanish Inquisition against the numbers. The machinery of the trial is laid bare in the sources the author gathers, James Sharp's Instruments of Darkness, and the great collection Early Modern European Witchcraft. An accusation, often born of a village quarrel or a sudden misfortune, set the process moving. The accused was questioned, and where the law allowed, tortured until a confession came. Crucially, the questions themselves carried the answers: the names of supposed accomplices, the details of the Sabbath, the pact with the devil. Confession then condemned the prisoner and demanded fresh names, so that a single accusation could blossom into a panic that consumed a whole district. The author stresses that this was a legal process, not a mob, conducted by educated men following written rules, which is precisely what made it so relentless and so deadly.
One case the author dug out personally shows how the panic actually worked on the ground. In the village of Sugny, in the southern Ardennes, a witchcraft trial of 1657 survives in the record. The defendant, named Pihart, came from a family long reputed to be witches, a hereditary stain passed down the bloodline. The poisoning accusation against the family, the author notes, seems to have been an act of revenge. A neighboring family had refused to let their son marry into Pihart's kin, saying they did not want their boy to mix with the race of the witches. Here, the grand demonology dissolves into something painfully human: old grudges, marriage snubs, and inherited reputation, turned by the law into a capital charge of consorting with the devil. Then comes one of the book's most provocative reversals. The author cites Murphy's study of the Saxon savior and other sources to argue that the burning of witches was not originally a Christian idea at all, but an inherited pagan one. Early medieval law sometimes attacked the practice from the other side, and one decree reportedly threatened that anyone who burned a so-called witch in the old manor would himself forfeit his head. Iceland's Bragas and other northern codes treated harmful magic as a real crime to be punished, long before the Inquisitors arrived. The implication is unsettling. The lynching of suspected witches may be older than the church that later organized it, a folk reflex against malevolent magic that Christianity first tried to restrain, and then, centuries later, harnessed for itself.
The author then confronts the most famous villain of all, the Spanish Inquisition, and finds the popular picture badly exaggerated. Citing a BBC investigation and the work of historian Henry Kamen, alongside scholars Contreras, Alvarez Junco, and Halitzer, the book reports that in Spain, only some 3,000 to 5,000 witches were ever executed, and that fewer than 2% of those who came before the tribunal were actually tortured. The Inquisition, with its bureaucrats and careful records, was often more skeptical of witchcraft accusations than the secular courts of Protestant Europe, which burned far more. The author's point is not to excuse the Inquisition, but to correct the legend, and to show that the worst of the killing happened elsewhere, in the patchwork of local courts that the popular memory has quietly forgotten.
Not all magic was hunted. Some of it wore a doctorate. The author turns to Cornelius Agrippa, the 16th century knight, physician, and scholar, whose 3 books of occult philosophy tried to make magic respectable, a high natural philosophy reaching from the elements up to the angels. Agrippa stood at the strange frontier where Renaissance learning, Jewish mysticism, and old pagan law met. Beside him, the author sets the painter, Hieronymus Bosch, whose nightmarish panels, read through Linda Harris's study, may encode a secret heresy, a hidden dualist faith smuggled into altarpieces under the church's nose. Together, they show the other face of the period. While humble villages burned for folk magic, learned men explored the same forbidden territory in libraries and on canvas, protected for a time by their status and their cleverness. Now the book travels east, to Persia, to the prophet Zoroaster and the priests the Greeks called Magi. There we find the cosmic war of light against darkness, the bridge of judgment, and the resurrection of the dead, ideas that, the author argues, flowed westward and reshaped the very religions that followed. To find the deepest root of all, the book travels east to Persia and to Zoroaster, the prophet the Greeks called a magician. Pliny's Natural History preserves the ancient debate, Aristotle counting Zoroaster among the magicians,
while Herodotus saw the Magi differently, as a priestly caste of the Medes. From their title, magus, comes our very word, magic. The author argues that this Persian priesthood and its prophet shaped far more of later religion than is usually admitted. The Magi tended the sacred fire, guarded an elaborate ritual purity, and taught a vision of the cosmos as a battlefield. To understand the devil, the end of the world, and the war of light against darkness, the book says, you must first sit at the fire altars of ancient Iran. At the heart of Zoroastrian teaching, as the author draws it from Mary Boyce and the Pahlavi scriptures, the Dingkard and the Bunda Hishnan, lies a stark dualism. The universe is the arena of a cosmic war between Ahura Mazda, the wise lord of light and order, and Ahriman, the hostile spirit of darkness and the lie. Every soul must choose a side, and at the end of time, good will triumph, the dead will rise, and the world will be cleansed and made new. The author argues that this Persian vision of two warring spirits, a final judgment, and a bodily resurrection seeped westward over the centuries and reshaped the religions it touched. The familiar Christian drama of God against Satan, heaven against hell, may carry the unmistakable fingerprints of Iran.
The Persians did not only theorize the next world, they claimed to have visited it. The author cites the book of Arda Virav, in which a righteous priest is given a sacred drink, falls into a trance, and is guided across the bridge of judgment to tour the heavens and the hells. He sees the blessed shining in light, and the wicked tormented in graphic, fitting punishments for their sins. Set beside Bernard McGinn's visions of the end and the later Christian journeys through the afterlife, the parallels are striking. The author argues that the whole later geography of paradise, purgatory, and a punishing hell owes a profound debt to such Iranian visions. Long before Dante, a Zoroastrian seer had already mapped the soul's road through reward and torment.
The Persian priests even walk into the gospel. The Magi who follow the star to Bethlehem are, the author notes, those same Eastern wise men, and their afterlife and legend is extraordinary. By the Middle Ages, the supposed bones of the three kings rested in a golden shrine in Cologne Cathedral, where they remain. Yet Marco Polo, traveling through Persia, claimed to have been shown the tomb of the same three kings among a community of fire-worshipping Zoroastrians in Iran. Examination of the Cologne relics has suggested an age of roughly 1700 to 2000 years. The author savors the irony. The most famous visitors at the cradle of Christianity were Zoroastrian priests, and Christendom's grandest city built a cathedral around their bones, while the fire temples that produced them still burned in the east.
Persia exported more than wise men. The author draws on Cumon's Mysteries of Mithra and the wider literature on cosmic duality to trace the god Mithras, born of Persian religion, whose mysteries swept the Roman Empire among soldiers in the very centuries Christianity was rising. Mithraism shared a sacred meal, a stress on light, and a cosmic struggle of good against evil. Behind it stood the older Persian idea of the Chinva bridge, which the soul must cross after death, widening for the righteous and narrowing to a blade for the wicked. The author argues that these images, the bridge of judgment, the savior of light, the dualist war, formed the cultural water in which early Christianity swam. The new faith did not arise in a vacuum, but in a world already soaked in Iran. Finally, we return to the beginning, to the church historian Eusebius, to Paul's duel with a magician, to the Dead Sea Scrolls with their sons of light and darkness, and at the last to the scapegoat of the Day of Atonement, the hidden root of every demonized other in the story we have told. How did the church remember its own beginnings? Through Eusebius of Caesarea, whose History of the Church, cited again and again, is our chief narrative of the first Christian centuries. Eusebius tells of the apostles' missions, the line of bishops, the martyrs under Rome, and, above all, the heretics he is determined to expose, the Gnostics, the followers of Simon Magus, the many teachers branded as enemies of the true faith. The author reads Eusebius carefully, but against the grain. The very heresies he condemns reveal how varied and contested early Christianity actually was, a crowded field of competing teachers and gospels. The orthodox story, in this view, is the account written by the winners, and the losers, dismissed as magicians and deceivers, had once been rival claimants to the same inheritance. The clash between the new faith and the old magic is written into Scripture itself. In the Acts of the Apostles, the author notes, Paul confronts a Jewish sorcerer named Bar-Jesus, also called Elymas the magician, and strikes him temporarily blind for opposing the gospel before a Roman official. It is a perfect emblem of the whole book, the apostle of the new religion overpowering the practitioner of the old. The author sets this aside the parables, the wheat and the tares left to grow until the harvest, and Christ's declaration that he is the light of the world walking among those in darkness. The same dualistic vocabulary of light and shadow, of a coming separation of the saved and the damned, runs through the Gospels, the very language, the author argues, that Persia had taught the world. The missing link between Persia and the Gospels, the author argues, lies in the caves above the Dead Sea. Drawing heavily on Geza Vermes's translation of the scrolls, the book points to the community's war scroll, which pits the sons of light against the sons of darkness in a final cosmic battle, to the strict community rule, with its two spirits of truth and falsehood set in every human heart, and to the angelic liturgies, and even an astrological physiognomy among the fragments. Here, in a Jewish brotherhood on the eve of Christianity, the Persian dualism has already taken root in Hebrew soil. Beside the Nag Hammadi Gospels and the Manichaean myth of the first man, the scrolls show a whole world of light and darkness theology, out of which the Christian movement would emerge. The book closes its apparatus with a strange and fitting choice, a full extract from the Talmudic tract Yoma on the Day of Atonement. There, the high priest takes two identical goats and casts lots, one marked for the Lord and one for Azazel. Over the second, he confesses the sins of the whole people, lays them upon its head, and sends it away to perish in the wilderness. The author preserves this ancient ritual as the hidden root of a vast idea, the transfer of guilt onto a victim, the sin-bearer driven out to die. It is the seed of the demonized other, the scapegoat, that runs through the whole history we have followed, the burned witch, the heretic, the pagan, the magician, each made to carry the sins of the community into the dark. We have followed this book from its footnotes to its final ritual, and a single thesis has held throughout. Christianity did not appear from nothing, nor did it simply erase what came before. It rose in a world soaked in Persian dualism, spread across a Europe alive with old gods, and built its identity by absorbing some of that older faith and condemning the rest as witchcraft and heresy. The Gokim of Kilcorglin, the spirits of the Russian village, the Magi at Cologne, the scrolls of the desert, and the scapegoat of the Day of Atonement are all, in their way, the same story, the buried religion still speaking through the faith that conquered it. To know Christianity truly, this book insists, you must know its shadow.